All right, everyone. Welcome to the X No Contact podcast. Today with me, I've got Jared and Dylan. Say hello, guys.
Hello there.
Hello.
Jared has an interesting story. I believe he was in the military or is in the military. I'm not sure. And also his ex was too. So they were both in the military. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm in the Navy. It'll be 4 years in July. She's also in the Navy, and that's how we ended up meeting. I'm going to Japan until 2024, and that's pretty much the reason we split. There's no way for her to follow, so we would be separated by a 14-hour time difference. I'm only going to be home once or twice a year for the next 3 years, so yeah, that was the end of that.
And how did it end? Like, how long were you together? And then how did it end? I mean, I know like because you had to you're going to Japan, but like how long were you together?
So we were together for almost 3 years. It would have been 3 years in August. Um, yeah, we met, and she ended up staying in the barracks with me most every day. So we were pretty much together the entire 3 years that we knew each other. It moved very, very quickly.
It takes like a lot of maturity to be able to understand like the nuance of traveling and how like it just won't work. Like with the like you said, the 14-hour difference and you being in a completely across the world. For both of you to just say, hey, look, we love each other. We've been together every day in the barracks for the last 3 years, but I think that we need to split. How did that work? How did that talk go?
So really that's honestly the hardest part for me is because there were no issues really leading up to that. But the talk came about. She had been kind of distant. I was driving from Pensacola to San Diego, and she'd been kind of distant, and I picked up on it, and so I ended up giving her a little bit of space, and we ended up talking on Discord a day or so later, and yeah, I mean, it started out just talking about our day. We were eating together, but I mean, we both kind of knew why we were in the chat together. And it was a rough situation to bring up, but can only do so much, you know.
Mm-hmm. And so, what made you want to go no contact? Because is it because like maybe it would just be too hard to keep in contact with her? Like it would just be too stressful.
Yeah, so I found the Discord server. I think most people, whenever they first experience a breakup, they scour the internet for, you know, what do I do? What's
Everything.
going on? Yeah, I mean, and so I did the same. I came across the server, um, and I saw the like message behind it, and I was like, I mean, that's a good idea. I get the premise behind it. Um, so yeah, I've done no contact except for a few specific occasions. I still need some stuff back, and she's reached out once by calling me and once by texting me that I haven't responded to. Um,
What kind of like how did you, like what did she say?
so the phone call was, she called me to let me know that she had gotten mail for me. Um, but she'd already opened it. I mean, she knew what it was. She knew that it could have been a text or an email or something, but she chose to call, and I answered that one. That one was, it's hard to hear the voice for sure. It's a different pain than just a text, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And you said that you wanted to give some advice to people too about things that you can do to sort of distract yourself and like keep busy
Yeah,
and kind
yeah.
of yeah.
Um, Personally for me, this has been something I've done for quite a few years. I have noise going 24/7. I guess you could kind of consider it white noise, but like I have Hulu going on behind me playing through, American Dad, Family Guy, I don't know, half the time.
That's
Um,
smart.
but just
'Cause
to just hear something behind me.
Yeah, background
yeah,
noise is always nice.
yeah, it's like you're not alone. Like it kind of feels like someone's there with you, even though they're not.
Yeah. Hulu behind me. Typically I'm on my laptop, so I've got YouTube or Spotify or something going in front of me and behind me, and it kind of makes me feel like I'm not just sitting here sometimes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think up some things that I would do to distract myself as well, and I would like, I guess I would just research a bunch of random stuff. Like I mentioned this a lot, but I would research like recipes and like cook stuff just because I was bored. But like really anything, like just doing anything that isn't sitting there, like because it's what you want to do in the moment. What you want to do is sit there. What you want to do is lay there and like be sad and just feel pain. Like it's almost like masochistic, if that's the word. But like just anything that isn't doing that is going to help you, and that's a great idea. Having background noise. Let's see, what other things can we think of that people can do to distract themselves? Find events.
Um, I mean, a big one for me, I leaned into to friends a lot, so I have I have random people FaceTiming me or texting me throughout the day. I've been going to the gym at least once a day, if not
At least,
occasionally
wow,
twice.
It's
Yeah,
good for
it's
you,
damn,
man.
you're hitting it hard.
um, it was something that I felt like I fell off of. I think whenever you get into a relationship, you kind of skimp on that stuff in order to spend time with that person. Um,
Yeah, you sacrifice like kind of yourself and your self pampering.
yeah,
That's good. Yeah,
yeah. So I went and got a new pre-workout, new protein powder. Um, and so yeah, I've been going to the gym at least every day for the last month or so.
that's great. I would say for anyone listening, if you're going through something similar, you're trying to find things to do. Um, look inward. Ask yourself, what have I been not doing for myself that I could do for myself? There's always something that you could improve on. For me, like it was my clothes. Like I got new clothes that actually fit me, and then I started like taking care of my skin, and I started eating healthy. It's like there's just always something that you can improve on, and in a way, like if you become a little bit self-obsessed, that's good. You need to make sure that you have your needs met, and like you said, um, you start neglecting that stuff when you're in a relationship. So if you're sitting there with nothing to do, I can almost guarantee you that there's something that you could be doing for yourself that you haven't been doing for yourself.
Yeah.
Even even on the note of like doing things you couldn't do when you were in your past relationship, because there's always something that you just wasn't, pardon me, you weren't able to do because you either didn't have the time to do it or you just couldn't do it because that person wasn't a fan of you doing whatever you wanted to do. So that's also something to try out, like, get a new haircut or get into this hobby because now you have time to do that versus, you being in your old relationship, you never had that time.
That's such a great point. Like if there's something that your ex didn't like and you didn't like that they didn't like that, or like for example, like you just said like a haircut, like, oh, my ex didn't like that kind of hair. Well, then lean into it and do it because like you had that freedom. And not only will it distract you, but it will be like the big F you to your ex, even though you're not talking to them, it's still a win. You don't have to talk to them to win. That's also what people do. They think they have to win by like winning them over, which is not how you win. You win by not trying to win them over. You win by your own personal wins are the real true wins that stick with you for life. It has nothing to do with how your ex responds or anything like that. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah,
but
for
I
sure.
I don't think there's
Yeah.
any kind of form of like winning at a breakup. Like I don't think there's really a winner or loser. Like if you're gonna do things, let me let me rephrase this. If you're gonna do things to kind of like have your ex see and be like, you want them to think, oh yeah, like wow, like they're becoming so successful. That's great fuel, but that shouldn't be like the motivation to do it. You should do that for yourself, and because that's going to apply to your next relationship, and it's going to apply to just your general success versus like, oh yeah, my ex is like totally going to be green with envy as I'm like this and that now, and it's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah,
I,
and like who sets? Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna I agreed with what he said. The doing stuff for you and not really to win. I think I'd be curious to know how many people. So like for me, for example, right after the breakup, it had been like 1 or 2 days, and I was going a couple different places in San Diego that have nice views, and so I would like post where I am and like Snapchat story, that kind of thing. And I'm sitting there smiling, and obviously like it's a day or two after the breakup. No, I'm not happy.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
saw on the story that she looked at the story, so I'm like, well, she's looking. I need to act happy, and it took me some time to be like, I need to stop, because I mean, obviously, I'm not fooling
Yeah.
anyone but myself.
Exactly. She knows you're not happy. Like you said, you're not fooling anyone.
Yeah, so like the relationship that brought me to X No Contact, like I had Snapchat with my ex at the time, and I never really used it. Like I didn't do like any of the public posts or whatever. I don't know the definition because like I'm technologically stupid with Snapchat. But yeah, so after the after the breakup, I started doing that for like that very reason. Like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna show that I'm so happy and like I'm having a great time. And it's like, fuck no, I was like, pardon my French, but like I was depressed. And looking back at that, it's kind of like looking at the blunder years of high school or something. Like, oh God, I did that. Like that's just nah, I shouldn't have done that.
Cringe.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just cringe at it because it's like you've come so far, like you've grown and you look back. But yeah, like that kind of thing, like it doesn't work. Like it's very it sticks out like a sore thumb. Like people who kind of like can see that kind of thing, like they're gonna see it from a mile away. And it's just like you don't feel like, pardon me, you don't feel better after doing it, and like especially if like your ex looks at it or like whatever platform you're posting it on, you're just like, oh yeah, they looked at it. Like you don't accomplish anything.
Yeah.
So it kind of backfires on you long term. So yeah, for anybody listening, I wouldn't recommend doing that because it's yeah, it just doesn't go the way you think it's gonna go.
Yeah.
I do want to make a
it's
point that. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I did want to make the point that, like you said that, like Dylan, you just said that you're not really accomplishing anything, but people mistake a view on their Instagram or a view on their Snapchat story. They mistake that for accomplishing something because they think that their name popping up associated with you on your story is some kind of accomplishment when it's not, and it's not. And they think that that's progress. They think, oh well, if my ex is showing up on my stories, is watching my stories, that's progress. That means that like we're connecting still and we're connected still. And it's not, that's the complete opposite of what it's so not a win and it's not accomplishment.
No, and people are curious by nature. Like your ex might not want to be with you, but they might want to hope you're okay, or they might be curious of what you're up to. But that doesn't mean like, because a lot of people I see are like, oh, she or he looked at my Snapchat story and it's like, well, anybody can do that. Like it's just a few taps on a on a touch screen and that's it. Like
They're literally bored. They're just swiping.
yeah, like it's
mindlessly like a zombie.
they're not like gripping the chair like, oh, I wonder what they posted. Like it's just
Yeah.
I don't know. People, I think they like over romanticize the thought of like your ex like checking up on your social media or something along the
Mm.
lines of that. But just like people are curious. Like it doesn't mean that they want to be with you. at all. Like you could have like the biggest piece of shit ex and still look at your social media because, like I said, people are just curious by nature.
Yeah, I'm off all social media now, but when I was on it like 6 months ago, I still have a few exes that like watch my shit, follow my shit, like,
Yeah,
and we don't even talk. I haven't talked to them in years. Like some of them won't even talk to me. They'll just keep watching my stories. Like it's so meaningless,
strange.
honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I still have an ex who follows me on my Spotify. You can't remove followers either, so they're there. But yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, once you, I think having like no social media is the best thing with a breakup, and like
Yeah.
especially if your ex doesn't have social media, like it's such a blessing in disguise. Like I feel sorry for the people whose exes are just plastered over social media because going no contact becomes way more difficult when it's like that information is just so easily accessible.
I agree.
I for a while I was posting on social media, not for anything else. I mean, yeah, kind of to seem happy, but mostly just for that like hit in my brain whenever I see her name pop up on something
Exactly.
I posted.
Yeah, it's like a drug.
Oh,
It
yeah.
really is.
And then once you see the name, you're like, I got to do more now because, well, I did this story and she saw it and she hasn't reached out to me. So now I need to go even more, like, showing that I'm happy. I have to go even more all out. I have to work harder now because, like, I know that she's watching me, and it's almost like you're performing. You're just becoming a performer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to ask your guys' opinions because I saw it on the Discord server before we joined. What is your guys' opinion on reaching out to your ex's parents after a breakup?
Mm.
Dylan, you
That
answer that first.
there is a lot of variables. Um, now I've never been in a situation personally where I have reached out to my ex's parents, but I think it just depends on your relationship with them individually. You shouldn't be reaching out to them in regards to your ex. It should be about you and them and have like nothing to do with your ex. So like if you've, like I said, like if you've established a relationship with them and you get along with them, like I think that's okay, but maybe to like keep your distance for a while. And if you want to like establish maybe a closer relationship in the future, that could be something to consider. But there it's a very gray area. Um 9 out of 10 times I probably wouldn't recommend it, but like I said, like it just depends on the individual. What do you think about that, John?
This isn't going to help Jared figure out his answer because I think I disagree with part of that. I don't think that it's okay to stay in touch even if you have a great relationship with the parents. I think that no matter what, you have to cut it off out of respect. Like you just have to, because really who comes first is the ex. Like that's how you met the parents. That's how it all happened in the first place. Um, Even if you have a good relationship with the parents, I think you need to cut it off. And I think, like I said, that's out of respect. I think that what you need to do if you're in that situation is you need to reach out to the parents and say, hey, look, like I really appreciate, our relationship. I really, enjoyed all the times we had. And I really, I love you guys as people. However, with what's going on between me and whoever, your daughter or son or whatever situation you're in, I have to stop talking to you just out of respect. And I hope you can understand that. And I think that that's the best way to go.
Okay. I mean I
Because, yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah.
If you had more to say, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
I was going to say, because if you keep it going, it's just not worth it. You're it's almost like beating a dead horse, trying to revive something that's already dead. And even if you have a great relationship with the parents, it's just not what it is anymore. It's not what it used to be. And because they're connected to something that you've lost. And so it's just, the dynamic is completely different.
Yeah, I can agree with that. A lot of my point comes from too is like I know a buddy who knew the parents before his ex, and because he worked with the father, and he became pretty good pals with the father, like I said. So like they're still in contact because they work together. But yeah, like if you
Okay, yeah.
yeah, so like I said, like it's very variable, but yeah, like if it's like in regards to like the relationship connected you to their parents, then yeah, I think that relationship is not going to be as close. Like you're not going to be like, oh yeah, like come over for dinner on Sunday kind of thing. Like that's not going
Yeah.
to fly. Like that's just really awkward and uncomfortable for I think everybody involved.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely an exception. Like unless you're contractually obliged to keep in touch with their parents, like for example, like Dylan just said, you work for them or something like that. Like that's definitely different because you're getting an income. There's a separate motive there. But if you're just keeping in touch with your ex's parents because you like them, they're cool, they understand you, they're fun, and yeah, if you're just keeping in touch with them because of that, I don't think you should stop because they're connected to your ex. It's just like contacting your ex. It's like it's just once removed.
Yep.
Yeah, you're kind of still like keeping like a hold on the relationship in that way, kind of like how would I say, it's almost like in the fact it's like something I would compare to with like somebody's partner passing away, and the partner who's still alive would be like in contact with their parents kind of thing, just to kind of like keep things alive in a sense, if that makes sense.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
kind of how I see it in some cases.
Why do you ask, Jared?
Well, I asked partially because I had just done it. So it's been a month since the breakup, and I figured that's a reasonable amount of time where she's for sure told them and everything, and I didn't want to like. I was close with them. I kind of make it a point to get close to the parents. And so I didn't mention my ex in the text. I messaged her dad and I said, "Hey, just wanted to let you know that I appreciate you and her stepmom's name. Wanted to let you know that I appreciate everything you and her have done for me over the last 3 years. Wish you guys all the best." And
That's
then,
perfect, man.
I think that's a pretty mature and
I,
responsible
yeah,
thing to say to them.
I didn't want to mention anything about my ex because it wasn't, the relationship that I'm referencing at that point isn't about me and my ex. It was about me and her parents and how it's ending.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
Oh,
of
that's
the ex.
fantastic. And then
Yeah.
he had replied and said, "Hope you're doing better than she is at the moment. She's lost, she's sad, she's hurting, she's in a bad place." And yeah, I mean, I didn't know how to respond to that.
Man, that's tough. It is. Like Dylan just said, it's like someone dying. That really
Yeah.
is what it's like.
And it is what it is. Like if they like it breakups suck on both sides no matter what. But at the end of the day, like it's just between you and them. Doesn't involve their parents
Yeah.
or any other third party.
Right.
I do
Unless you're
want to
like
mention though that. Sorry, what?
oh, I said unless you're like Polly or something, but
Oh,
yeah.
oh, someone actually sent an email about Polly, and I definitely want to put them on the podcast and talk about that. But,
That would be interesting.
but I was gonna, yeah. Jared, I really respect the way that you have handled this situation, and I think that your ex also has handled it very maturely. I think that you both are very mature people, and you both have handled this in a very clean way. Like you're doing everything that you can. You're not sabotaging anything. You're not really hurting yourself. You're just kind of like trying to cope and deal, and that's all that we really can do as human beings. I just think that you have handled this very well, and from what I've heard, and very maturely.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's hard. It's something that I had to learn from my last relationship, my last decent long relationship. Because I did, I went back and I begged and pleaded and um I did all these things, and looking back now, I'm like, I was really weak at the time.
Mm.
And so this relationship was really eye-opening in a lot of ways. We spent a lot of time together, so it was a good way to learn a lot about myself, and so I just kind of I feel like it deserves a good amount of respect for what it was.
Yeah. I'm like, it's like I'm sad for you because it's like you guys were a great couple, I'm assuming, and things were fine. It was just that you were going to Japan.
Yeah, yeah, we really didn't have any issues. I mean, I think every couple bickers, but I mean,
Yeah.
other than that, we didn't really have any issues, and so that's the really tough part to come to terms with the fact that it's done.
Yeah. And it's like it's good that you two kind of decided that the long distance thing wasn't going to work in that aspect, because like some people can do it, but then there are people who just they can't do it, and a lot of the time they're not
And they
honest about
try.
it. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's one thing to try and do it, but then it's like if you know ahead of time that it's not going to work out, then yeah, it is best to come to terms with things and end things in a mature and mutual way.
Yeah, we'd already been sort of trying long distance. I mean, we met in Georgia. Whenever I left there, I had a school in Pensacola for 2 months, and then now I'm at another school here in San Diego. So we already had kind of tried the distance, and I think especially like if everyone has their love language, and hers was physical affection, then you can't get that from couple hundred, couple thousand miles away.
Yeah. I think that's extremely, extremely important.
Absolutely.
I think also with long distance relationships, if you don't have that physicality, and I would say this is just a random number, don't quote me on this, but at least once a week you have to be able to touch your partner. I mean, what do they say? Like babies, if they're not touched, they'll die. Like if there's some nerve endings on their backs, their spines, that if a mother or whoever doesn't touch that part, they're a lot more likely to die. And just touching is just so there's so many nuances about touching and just feeling and being with that person physically that is just so important, not just mentally, but beyond that, like your body needs it. That's a really good point that you raised, and I think that yeah, if you're in a long distance relationship, that you need to strive to touch your partner, be near them physically at least once a week.
Yeah, and they
And
they need
yeah,
they need an end date. I mean,
yes,
you can't. I think it's a lot to ask someone already just to be like, hey, I'm going somewhere for this long, but at least if you can give them like, I'm sure I'll be home once a month or at the end of this year or something like that.
yes.
But I couldn't give that. I mean, I knew that I'd be there until 2024, but I couldn't tell her, hey, I'll be home. This many times a year, I'll be able to talk during this time, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, this story breaks my heart, honestly, because it's like the only thing that got in the way was just life, and it was just the happenstances of your situations, and it wasn't about fighting or arguing or falling out of love or cheating or anything like that. It was just that you had to go to Japan, and that's just how it
Yeah.
was, and that is awful that like that's how it ended, because it's like, well, what if it didn't end? Like, what if you didn't have to go to Japan? Like, and then it's heartbreaking.
It's a lot of thoughts, mostly later at night. And that's one other thing to keep myself occupied. Not gonna forget that, but I'll finish this sentence. It's one of the late night thoughts of if I was still in Georgia, um, I would still be with her. And we had a dog together, and I had to call the vet and tell him, you need to make me an emergency contact. Um, so I mean, I miss our dog. I miss all that, but I have to go.
Yeah.
Um, one other one other thing that keeps me from getting too upset at night is I don't know if you guys or anybody else that might be listening is the same, but during the day with the sun shining in the windows and everything, typically, I can kind of block out those thoughts or get past them. But especially at night, if it's dark in the room, I have a lot harder time. So I have all the lights on during the night up until the point that I go to sleep.
That's really smart. I never thought about that.
They have the natural sunlight lamps as well, which I've heard work well. But yeah, all the lights possible.
It makes sense too, because if your lights are off, your mind you start to go in your head more
Yeah,
because it doesn't have anything to focus on. There's nothing to focus on. So all you can focus on is your thoughts. That's really smart with the background noise and the lights on. That's really good advice.
Yeah, it does help.
And like you said, reaching out to friends.
yeah. I have reached out to friends. I mean, I think a lot of people don't talk to their friends as much as they normally would. So like when you're in a relationship, I drop off with some of my friends. So I have really leaned in, and a lot of my friends have been way more supportive than I would have thought. I have.
What
I
do you
have
mean? Like
one.
you were surprised by their response?
Yeah, I mean, I expected to be able to talk to them, and kind of explain what's going on, because some of them I met in Georgia, but I have
Mhm.
one friend right now who texts me a couple times a day, on top of normal texting, and she's like, "Have you eaten? Have you drank enough water? Um, have you gotten out? You got
Wow,
anything planned?" Like just making sure that I'm still at least giving myself the minimum that I need to continue.
that's a great human.
Yeah.
Take note of that too. If anyone listening has someone doing that for them, if they have a friend texting them and saying, have you eaten? Are you okay today? Like, how are you feeling? What are your plans? If you're listening and you have someone who texts you that kind of stuff, you need to take notice and you need to realize that that is a real mother effer and they care about you and appreciate them
Yeah,
because those people won't leave you.
it takes a strong person, especially when when you're feeling sad and somebody's like, "How are you doing?" I mean, all you want to talk about is what happened.
Yeah.
So there's only so many different ways you can explain that you broke up, and a lot of good people are sitting there continually go on and on about the same thing. Um, so definitely good people.
Yeah. You almost feel shame too at some point. Like, because at some point, everyone listening, I'm sure that at some point their friends got sick of hearing about their breakup.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
that's a hard one because you want to talk about it, but you don't want to push them away by talking about your own misery.
Right. And then they go like, well, what's wrong? And you're like, you already know what's wrong. Like, it's still what's wrong with me. Like, I can't fix it. It's just
Mhm.
how I feel. And you want to be like, yeah, you want to be healed and better, but it's just not the way it is. But there is some shame. I feel like that people feel shame when they have to keep explaining to their friends, or they have this motivation to just keep telling them like about it over and over and over again. It's almost a compulsive thing because it's the same way that we Google things over and over and over again. Like probably the same way that you found X no contact. Um, it's almost like the same thing with your friends. Is you keep telling them different ways of how you broke up. Like you just said, you start running out of ways to say it. It's almost like you start running out of things to search, and yeah, like I think that just is part of the journey with trauma. It's just at the end of the day, it's not about um like what to do or who you're talking to or what. It's about like it's just about coping and finding ways to deal with it, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Did I'd be curious to see how many people after a breakup considered or went to therapy. Um,
That's an interesting point. Yeah, I would say that most people. Well, Dylan, what do you think? I think in the Discord and the Telegram chat, I feel like it's 50-50. Half the people do, half people don't. Or maybe there's a bunch of liars who say they do and they just really don't.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of consideration for therapy, to say the very least. I think it is a good idea because breakups can be, they can take a really heavy toll on you. I don't think there's any shame of asking for help or needing help with therapy. I think it's actually a very mature thing to choose and do because at the end of the day, you're helping yourself. Like, there's no shame in that. It's like if you're like extremely overweight and you're going to the gym, like, no, fuck, just
Yep.
rock it. Like, you're helping
Mhm.
yourself. Like, if anybody's gonna shame you for that, they're the asshole, not you. You're trying to help yourself actively. Like, you got my full respect.
Yeah. I do want to make a note about therapy too, is that it's not just like, oh, go to therapy because therapy is good and everyone says it's good and you should do it because you're sad. Like, no, you go to therapy because your friends are sick of you talking about it. Your family is sick of you talking about it, but you have to like just get it out. And a therapist is the one person that you can talk over and over and over again with about it. And if you can channel that energy to your therapist, your relationships with your friends and your family will have space and breath and they can all breathe and, because they know that you have the attention and someone there listening that you need, because your friends and your family can't be your therapist. Like they can try and they sure do because they love you, but they can't be your therapist and they can't help really. That they can help in terms of being there for you, but a therapist is way more equipped for helping you work through it and actually making a positive change. So if you feel like your friends are sick of hearing about your breakup or your family is sick of hearing about your breakup, go to a therapist because they would love to hear about it.
yeah, I mean, they do offer ways of I guess disassociating yourself with that because for the first time in my life I tried therapy, um, which is terrifying. I mean,
Yes.
you have to go meet a new person you've never met before, and suddenly, anything that you're feeling, your deep dark secrets about yourself that you've kept hidden from everybody else because it's embarrassing. You need to talk about that to move past it.
Yep.
Yeah. No, you got to
Uh,
take a leap of faith because, like, essentially, you're expected to open up and trust a complete stranger with, like, yeah, like your deepest, darkest thoughts, and that's like something you might not even tell like your closest friends, right? So it is scary. Like,
Very.
I won't dismiss that, but it is, if you can get the right therapist, because like I said, like you might come across therapists who you might not vibe with, you might not be comfortable with them. That's normal.
Yep.
Sometimes you need to go through literally like 10 therapists to find the right one for you. There's no shame in that. But once you find one that you click with, therapy becomes so much more worth it.
100%. And don't write off therapy because you have a bad therapist. I see a lot of people do that too. They go to therapy and they're like, yeah, I don't know, like my therapist is okay. Like I just tell him stuff and he just doesn't. Like I had a therapist who would literally all he would do, because we both had read this book by Eckhart Tolle called Power of Now. It was like this mindfulness book, and all he would do would be like, okay, after our session, he'd be like, okay, so just go back and read chapter 3. I'm like, are you serious? Like you're just telling me to read the book that I already read?
Yeah.
So people tend to write off therapy after that. They go, yeah, I don't like therapy. It doesn't work for me because he told me to read chapter 3 and I already read chapter 3. You know what I mean? It's like, but you have to, like you just said, keep finding better therapists. And honestly, like I say this to everyone because I used to talk to social workers. I used to talk to people with like associate's degrees, master's degrees. Talk to a psychologist with a PhD, because they really like, and you're secure knowing that they know what they're talking about. There are a lot of therapists out there who kind of just like, I feel like they kind of just wing it.
I could definitely see that.
But
Absolutely.
yeah,
And we're also like, they're humans at the end of the day too. Like, you're not going to click with, you know, every single person. You're not going to want to be friends or date every single person. And the same thing goes with therapy, is like, you might just not click with them, and that's fine. Like, that's just the way it is. But yeah, like what you said, John, like, don't give up on therapy if you have a few bad therapists that, well, I wouldn't say essentially bad, but like, you just therapists you don't click with, because it can be a journey in itself finding the right one, but it's worth the journey.
100%. And that's the same thing with kind of what we talked about at the beginning of this session, was like being selfish and distracting yourself by thinking about what you can do for yourself and things that you've been putting off for yourself. And mental health is one of those things. And going to therapy is just like you said, Dylan, too, going to the gym. It's just the mental gym. And if you are even listening to this podcast, you need to be seeing a therapist. Like, that's just how it is.
I agree.
Yeah. I think if you're not like essentially, like, to really strongly consider going to therapy, now not everybody's going to need to. I think it is beneficial. I think everybody should try it at least once. But if you feel like you're stuck in a loop and you feel like you're not getting better, or you're just like, you know, no matter what you do, you're hyper focused on the breakup, yeah, like, therapy ASAP, because that, you know, that's stuff that's going to help you. Like, and you know, if it doesn't, at least you tried. But you can't just sit there and expect to get better. You actually have to make an active and conscious effort to get better.
Yeah.
Like, if you're, like I said, if you're gonna sit at home and you know, you're gonna sit in your grief all day, every single day, for weeks and weeks or months on end, like, nothing's gonna change. Like, if I just sit here and expect to get in tip top shape, like, it's not gonna happen, because I'm sitting on my ass. Like, I actually have to go out there, you know, lift weights, jog, all that fun stuff. Same thing with getting better from a breakup. Like, mentally, you have to do something.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about also real quick the frightening aspect of it, because you're both so right about that. It is very, 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 it's probably like one of the scariest things you'll ever do, is to see a therapist and just completely open up to them. If you're scared of seeing a therapist, that means you need to go. The more scared you are, the more you need to go. If you're deathly afraid, like, it makes you sick thinking about telling your therapist these things, you need to go. That means you have to go.
I would say that it means you've got, if you're deathly afraid, you've got baggage. And
Absolutely.
no better person to put that on than somebody who's trained and licensed to listen to that and work through it with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, like, I started going to therapy about a month ago, and like, honestly, like, it was my first time doing it, and it's been fantastic. Like, I think I lucked out with my therapist, which is great, because like, I was kind of expecting, like, okay, I'm probably not going to click with this one, but like, with me and my therapist, we're on the same page, so that's fantastic. But yeah, like, it's drastically helped me, and like I said, like, I strongly recommend at least try it once.
Yeah. Therapy basically saved my life, and I'm sure it saved so many people's lives too. Like, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't find my therapist. And to be honest with you, like, if you're putting it off, like, you're just really, you love hurting yourself. That's what it is. Like, if you're putting off seeing a therapist, then you love hurting yourself, and you need to just stop. You need to just stop, realize what you're doing to yourself, realize that kind of like get out of your head for a second and look at yourself as another person, and what you would say to that person, and realize that, like, you're a human just like everyone else, and you deserve, you know, good treatment, and you deserve a therapist. And anyone who's avoiding therapy, I would just say, like, stop. Like, just stop and realize that you're just like as valuable as anyone else, and that you don't deserve pain, and you really don't. Even though you think you do, you don't. your mind can go in so many places and you can really convince yourself of anything. And you just have to have that outside perspective. And I've gone through, like Dylan just said, like, you can go through 10 therapists before you find the right one. I did. I went through like 5 or 6, and I found like the last one. I found it, and I was like, wow, this guy. Like every time I leave the therapist office, I feel like I'm God. I feel like I'm top of the world. I'm like, oh my God, like all these things I was so worried about, like they're not even that bad. And like I have these tools now that I can use to deal with them next time these things come up. So not only do you just have someone there listening to you, which is very important, but also they give you tools that you can use for the rest of your life. Like, and that's really the core of therapy, is like gaining that tool that you can use forever, over and over and over again. And you'll be a much happier person because of it.
Definitely.
Yeah, the way I see it, like it's an investment into your health, just like working out. Like physically, you're gonna feel better, you're gonna be healthier, you're probably gonna live longer. And it kind of applies to therapy as well. It's like you're investing in yourself, you're taking lessons that you can apply for later life situations. Like I think one of the misconceptions of therapy, at least in my opinion, is that some people think it's a waste of money because, like, oh, like you got to keep going back, and you're not, you're only taking what you can take out of the sessions, and then that's it. But it's not like you're opening your mind to how to deal with situations, and it's like I said, like it's things you can apply later in life.
It's good to get an outside perspective on stuff sometimes. I mean, if you're just sitting there thinking about all these situations you're going through, I mean, your mind is your mind. So it's good to get a completely unbiased perspective on things that you might be dealing with or going through. Because even friends that you talk to, I mean, they have their bias, and I feel like a therapist is able to kind of put their own thoughts out of it and kind of tell you the straight up facts about what you might be going through mentally.
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
And like they're trained to do this. Like friends are great. It's great to have friends that you can rely on, but at the same time, like like they're not trained therapists unless they're literally trained therapists. But even then, like it comes to a time like they can only support you so far. And that's great, but that's something to understand on both sides of a friendship. And it's a good thing to reflect on, is that okay, maybe perhaps it's time to see a therapist versus emotionally relying on my friends so much.
Yeah. And don't get mad at your friends either, like, because they're just
No.
trying to help. And they're just people, man. They're just like living their lives, and they care for you, and they're trying to help you out. But if they reach their limit, man, understand that they reach their limit, because everyone has a limit. And like it's not personal, it really isn't. It's just that you need to help yourself at that
Yeah.
point.
Everybody goes through their own things too. And good friends will support you in the ways that they can. But at the end of the day too, like everybody's going through something. I think a lot of people don't realize that because everybody's the hero in their own story, right?
Yeah.
So, your issues are going to be kind of in the spotlight versus in hindsight, your friends, your family, whatever, like they all have their own issues, same as you.
Yeah. So Jared, I want to hear some more advice about things that you can do to distract yourself, and maybe some advice for people who are going through something similar that you've gone through. Like, what would you tell someone who is going through something similar? Like they want to be together, but they just can't because of circumstances. Like, what would you tell them?
Personally, I've said it a few times that there are some people that are meant, they're meant to be a lesson for you, meant to live more in your heart and not your head. And I would say that it's important to understand that at such a young age, you have to go through a bunch, maybe not a bunch. you have to go through relationships though to learn how to love correctly. And I think every relationship has its lesson that it gives. Even if you go through something toxic, um, in the end it shows you how or what kind of patterns that you don't like or behaviors, and it's still something that can help lead you to the right person for you.
Do you think that maybe there's some things with your ex that, even though it was mostly circumstance, that maybe there are also some things with your ex that maybe you didn't like that much?
Yeah, of course, of course. And I'm sure that people I've dated in the past could say the same about me. I mean, she did have some issues that were noticeable from the beginning that we talked about that didn't get better. She occasionally had anger issues,
Mm.
and that was something that came up occasionally. Um, so yeah, I mean, looking back without having the rose-colored glasses of a relationship, I think it's important to see that not everyone's perfect, even if at the time during the relationship it might seem like they are.
Yeah. I think this is kind of turning into a thing about like how your mind can just fuck with you. Like, I mean, turning on the lights and keeping things in the background are great advice for people because, well, because your mind fucks with you and you start to have all these crazy thoughts and you start to follow these thoughts. And then that's why you don't go to therapy too, is because you have these strong beliefs that you don't need it or they're not good enough or they won't fix you because you're too broken. And your mind really, really, really fucks with you.
Yeah, you're in. I think after a relationship, your greatest enemy at the time is going to be yourself.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah, that is 100% true.
You're gonna. I mean, I think you're gonna sit there, especially at night, and you're gonna overthink things. You're gonna overanalyze situations. Uh, I mean, with me and the Snapchat thing, I was overanalyzing the hell out of that. Like, I knew her schedule. I knew when she got out of work. So to me, in my head, I was like, she just got out of work. The first thing she did was go and, she viewed my Snapchat story. So she's thinking of me, right? That's that's awesome. So I got to post more so that way she knows that, like, hey, I saw that you were thinking of me. So now I'm gonna post so you can still see me.
Yeah.
Um, and that's that could be the case, and it may not be. And that was just me sitting in the room here thinking to myself for hours and hours of what could be going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
FOMO, kind of in a sense. I find something I've learned just recently, like kind of with the last gal I was seeing. Um, it's basically kind of having to do with like having what if scenarios, because I'm pretty sure like every single one of us is guilty here in this, this podcast and listening of saying, oh, like what if I did this or what if this happened? And I think at the end of the day, like the best thing to do is say, you know what, there can't be a what if because this is how it happened. Like
Yeah.
it's done. It's already happened. Like the breakup, whether you want to accept it now or later down the road, like this is the reality of the situation. Like the world's still turning. So you can either like sit in your couch, drinking beer or whatever, and just like, what if I did this? Or you could just say, you know what? At the time I did this, I thought it was the best thing to do. This is just how it is. And with me personally, I felt like being in this mindset, it's helped me have a healthier outlook on how things occurred. It's given me a healthier outlook on relationships, I think, in general. And just generally speaking, like I feel like I'm moving on in a pretty healthy way. And that you're not really putting attachment to that person or even to the past because you're kind of just, it's a mindset to kind of get you in the present and looking for the future.
Yeah. Get rid of what ifs. Like if you have any what ifs, like just throw them out because they don't matter. What matters is like with the reality of what's happening. My mom used to tell me, she would say, if you had just said, the right words at the right time, which is BS. Like, and she said that, she's like, that's BS. Like, you'll never say the right words. It's just not like, you think that like, if you just did this correctly, or you just, maybe you just didn't go to Japan, like, but that's just not how life works. Like, I do kind of believe in fate in that sense. Like, I think that just things work out the way they're supposed to. And the what ifs really are just distractions. They're just fantasies. The what ifs, like, what if I did this? What if I did that? It's just really mental masturbation. It's not
Yeah.
constructive. It's just, yeah.
It makes you doubt your decisions too, because like at that time, you both made the decisions that led you to where you are now. And looking back, you were probably very, very confident in what you were doing and what you were saying. And then, like having the what ifs, like you're kind of doubting yourself and making you think, oh, like, that I did it wrong. But, at the same time, it's like, what are you going to change? Like, you don't have a time machine, right? So
Yeah.
it is what it is. Like, maybe you messed up, maybe they messed up, but at the time, for what it's worth, like, you thought you're saying or doing the right thing, and that's, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Live and learn.
Exactly.
Yep.
I
think I think it's important to ground yourself in the present. Because I have to tell myself, especially at night when I'm laying in bed, still keep the TV on, might I add. But if I'm sitting there laying in bed, and those thoughts pop into my head, like, dude, you should have done this, or you should have said this or acted this way. And I have to tell myself, like, I know that I did what I did because I thought it was right. And I can't change what happened. It happened.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to keep yourself grounded in the present instead of, like, fantasizing the past so much.
Exactly. Like when you're driving a car, you're not going to be looking constantly behind you because you're probably going to rear end somebody or
Yeah.
walk into a pole, right? So like it's the same thing. Like, as stupid as it sounds, it applies to something you may or may not have screwed up in the past. Like, if you keep looking behind you, like, you're gonna walk into a pole and smack your noggin off it. So
That must be why the Discord is such a car crash sometimes.
and like, I get it. Like, it's hard not to look behind you because it is what it is. But at the same time, like, if you don't start looking forward, like, you don't know, you can't see what you're gonna walk into. Like, it's just it's a good mindset to do. It's difficult at times, and like, I can empathize with that. But I think once you really put yourself on that mindset, that things are going to be a lot less uphill for battle wise with you dealing with the breakup.
Yeah. And I like how Jared mentioned the sunlight and how, like, because you put it interestingly, because you said, well, when you have like the windows up, like the shades up and the sunlight's, the windows, all that stuff, like, you don't need the TV on, you don't need noise. And I think that's important to note, because you don't. It's true. Like, that's life. Like, the sun is out, the birds are chirping. Like, open your shades and look outside. And this might sound a little bit woo-woo, but just look outside and just realize that, like, life goes on. It doesn't matter. Life still goes on, and enjoy, like, just the colors and the sounds. And you're not alone either. You're really not alone. Like, go outside, look outside. You're not alone. And even if you're not near many humans, there's animals. It's just, the world is so plentiful and it has so much to give. And that does sound woo-woo again, but it's true. You don't really need your ex to feel fulfilled. And I think people chase that. But there was another point I wanted to make about regrets or thinking, what if? You made the best decision that you could have made at the time with what you knew. So have no regrets. Like, just have no regrets, because you did the best you could with what you had and what you knew at the time. And like Dylan said, or Jared, I forget, you don't have a time machine. You can't just take a time machine. No one has that. And forgive yourself for your decisions. That's also comes into play, which is like you're attacking yourself. You're hurting yourself. You must like pain because you need to forgive yourself about your choices. Like you wouldn't tell someone else, oh, that choice was horrible. Like F you. That was a stupid choice. I can't believe like F. No, you would be like, well, you did your best. So if you were to tell someone that, why don't you tell yourself that? Because it's true. You did your best with what you had and what you knew at the time. And that's just how it is. And that's just how life goes. Like you're not just going to be some enlightened being all the time and always make the quote unquote correct decision. And sometimes, most of the time, I would say, you should have broken up. Like that's just the way that your life should have gone, and you will find someone better along the way. So like, give yourself space, forgive yourself for your regrets. Don't have them because just don't. There's no reason to have regrets. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that. I think it was well put.
It does.
Yeah, I think that pretty accurately summarizes most of what we said. I mean, I think a lot of that will resonate with the people that might watch this podcast or listen to the podcast.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. This was like a really positive episode. I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So for people listening, okay, I do want to say, give us a rating, a 5-star rating or whatever, however you feel about it. Give us a rating because ratings do help. And if you want to reach out to the podcast, you can email podcast@xnocontact.com. We found Jared. Jared is from the Discord server. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we have a Discord server. We have a Telegram chat as well. Obviously the subreddit, which is r/xnocontact. Become a contributor on the Discord. If you become a contributor, it's $2.99 a month. You get a special role and you can actually track your no contact progress. We have a special X no contact bot that'll actually track your progress for you. We also have a Patreon that you can do, which also gives you those Discord rewards. Our highest Patreon tier is like, I think it's like $9.97, and it's you get the Discord role and you also get to have your questions answered on our podcast. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. So thank you both for coming on. Like I said, I really enjoyed this. I think it was really positive, and I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Of course, I had a good time. I appreciate you having me on.
It was good talking with you both.
Yeah. Thank you guys.